That's just probably the scariest time in my life.
Last week, we heard from Metro officers who intervened to protect the lives of federal employees from the 400 or so Bundy supporters and armed militia members. Officers told us they feared for their lives that day because of the assembled firepower and because many in the crowd had pointed weapons at officers, taunted them, told them they should be ready to die.
Remember, we're talking about cattle, not human beings.
Assistant Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who was left in charge of the Metro contingent by Sheriff Doug Gillespie, told us such alleged behavior would be the subject of a criminal investigation.
The federal authorities are conducting an investigation, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to continue into the future.
Would there be consequences for somebody who's there on videotape, on a news camera, pointing a gun at a Metro officer or pointing a gun at a federal ranger?
Yes, there's going to be consequences.
When we first got out there, that's who when we pulled up and made the left there to divide the I-15 north and south is where we were set up. That's all you saw. You saw the kids and you saw the women, and then you can see the horses off, in the backdrop, and then you see the men with guns everywhere. They're laying on the ground. They're in the back of pickup trucks, and you're going, wow, this would never happen down in Las Vegas. But it was there. That's not a rumor. That was reality. And I saw that with my own eyes, no doubt.
Sergeant Jenkins has been interviewed by the FBI already.
All right, sir. Tell us how you heard about the Bundy conflict, what was going on up there, and what inspired you to take the trek up to Bunkerville.
Well, I've been following this since the middle 1990s, okay? And as I said before, I'm actually related to those people. So when I saw what was taking place back around 95 or so, I have some interest there. And then as I saw it escalate, I decided that you just had to go out there and make some sort of impression. I've watched the erosion of our rights, our constitutional rights. I was pretty familiar with that whole case. I saw what they did to the Mr. Hayes on the Hayes Ranch. And
where was that? I'm not familiar with that.
That's over in Nye County. And recently a judge had just come out prior to us going out there and said there was a conspiracy between the BLM and the Forest Service to deprive these ranchers of their ranches. So I just decided this was a time that we really needed to go and make a statement for freedom and our constitutional rights. As I said, they're being eroded just about every place you look. I actually acted as a mediator as soon as I got there and Metro started pulling up, and I went and talked to Officer Jenkins, and Officer Brown, and then there was another officer, and I don't recall his name. But I just stated our position, that we just wanted them to stand down if they wanted to, honor their oath and help us retrieve the cattle, because we've just been told by Gillespie that we could have the cattle. And I have some issues with some of the things that Officer Jenkins said. I've watched his interview with you, and there are a tremendous amount of inconsistencies. I was one that personally talked to him, and I was there all the time that he was there. And he was 50 yards away from any of the other militia. So I take issue with some of the things that he said.
Like what?
He talked about somebody saying, "Are you ready to die?" After that, I went and talked to Officer Jenkins, and there was nothing like what he said that took place. So, and I think that's inflammatory.
Did you ever see any of the Bundy supporters point weapons at officers, at BLM agents?
Never.
Metro Police said there was.
I understand that, yeah. And I take issue with that. I never saw anybody point a weapon at them, so.
After all is said and done, do you have any regrets about going up there?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think that thing played out perfectly. It's brought to the forefront a lot of issues, especially Harry Reid and what this man is doing and what he's capable of doing, his underhand dealings, and it's going to be exposed more all the time. But him and his son have brokered a deal with the Chinese for that property up there, and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. But when Harry Reid comes out and calls us domestic terrorists, that just raised a big, huge red flag. And if there's anybody that's a terrorist, it's Harry Reid. So I think it's the best thing that could have happened. We wanted to, when I say we, I'll say all freedom-loving people that were there, we wanted to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough. But at the same time, we didn't want anybody to get hurt, okay? And that it played out exactly like that. We had the supposed BLM federal officers, which I do not believe they were or are, but they backed down. They backed down, and that is encouraging for other people that are freedom-loving, that want to take the initiative to defend their rights. And in this case, defend our food source too.
So after yesterday's I-Team story.
It raises some red flags. I'm not really all that concerned about it personally. I think that if FBI is going to investigate anybody, they need to investigate those people that were impersonating law officers. The BLM has no legal mandate to enforce any law. By the original statutes, the original bill that went through in 1976, they were never given law enforcement authority. So what happens when you have an armed person outside of, working under the color of law, showing up? Now you have an armed felon. That's basically what you have. And that's really the way I look at those guys. They don't probably understand that, but they were under the color of law. They had no law enforcement authority, and that's very, very important to understand.
What about others? I mean, they had to have seen the newscasts. They had to have seen the YouTube videos. People out there holding guns.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's nothing wrong with holding a gun. Okay, now, from what I understand, the issues that they were pointing at, I personally never saw that. The only thing I did see is on the video clips, it looks like one gentleman is pointing in that direction. As you can tell, I've been a hunter from way back. He could have been aiming 30 feet over their heads.
Are you talking about that still photo?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
He could have easily been aiming 30 feet over their heads. So how are you going to prove that? I talked to every one of those people when they came into camp. Every one of them had the same mind. We're here to protect the protesters and the Bundys. We're not here for anything else.